All right, everybody, today I'm in the studio with my wonderful mother. She's going to give us the perspective on a dental hygiene career, and I'm going to really enjoy it because I love my mother. All right.
Well, I'm glad to be here, so let's go for it.
All right. Let's get that plaque. Plaque, teeth, yeah. That's all I know, so.
That works.
All right, so let's start easy because
Okay.
I don't know anything. What is your professional title,
Registered dental hygienist.
and how long have you been doing it now?
Oh my gosh, almost 21 years.
21 years.
21 years.
See, we're over the 2-decade mark.
Yep, at the same place.
At the same. You worked for one place right before that, right?
Yes, but I worked a couple of days a week there and a couple of days a week where I'm at.
Oh, 21 though.
So there's a lot for the office and the people I work with. A lot about my patients.
I don't know if you want to put this out there, but just in case anybody needs a cleaning or a new office and they happen to be in the area or they're an absolute freak and want to fly out here, where do you work?
I work for Dundee Family Dentistry in
And
Dundee, Oregon.
Right there, Dundee, Oregon. So there you go. Sign up. Don't be crazy, though. Coming to my mother, don't be a wacko sitting in her chair. All right. So let's get some history in this. Go way back. When did you get started in the dental field?
Right out of high school. As soon as I graduated high school, I went to dental assisting school. I don't necessarily want to say the year. It makes me really, really old.
Nah, we're all old. It's fine.
But right out of high school.
All right. Fresh out of high school. So then how long did you do assisting for?
12 years, pretty much. I took a couple years off when you were little, right after you were born. And I worked part-time when I went through my hygiene prerequisites, but 12 years, pretty much.
What drew you to the field?
Dentistry was never really one that quite came to mind for me. And it's kind of an odd thing. I was in a career development class in high school, and we all had to bring up a profession that we liked as it went around the room. And mine, of course, was something like accounting because that's what my mom did. So it was what came to mind. And somebody said dentist. And I thought, that's kind of an interesting thought. And so we had to do some time, report, homework, whatever, that we had to go spend some time in a dental or wherever you wanted to go. And so I went to my dentist and I enjoyed it. So right out of high school, then as soon as I graduated, I looked into assisting. I always wanted to do hygiene, but at the time I could not wait to get married to your father. And so assisting was only a year. So I figured I could do a year, I could go to work, I could get married, I could always go back to school.
Just come right back to it when you're ready.
Pretty much was the thinking.
As soon as you get through your honeymoon phase.
Yeah, it's much harder to go to school when you got a little one, though. But yeah.
Yeah, I kind of came along in that whole mix, huh?
You did. Yep. But that's okay.
Well, I mean, it's always good, though. You find that passion. That's what we're hoping to figure out here for everybody, right?
Yep.
So, dental assisting, what all is involved in it?
And dental assisting?
Yeah.
So a dental assistant is the one that sits beside the dentist, like when you're having work done. They actually are really the backbones in a dental office. They're way busier than we are. They work way harder than hygienists do or anybody else does. They have a lot of interaction with patients, take x-rays, get you seated, help the dentist with everything. Then in our office, they work on sterilizing instruments, restocking, ordering. We do laundry. They do everything. The technical end for an assistant is to assist the dentist. So that's really their primary job, is to hand him the tools, the support that he needs to get the work done chairside.
So pretty much everything except cleaning and filling.
Yes.
Is that typically where people start when they get in the dental field?
A lot of them do, but anymore, a lot of people go straight towards hygiene or straight into dental field. Yeah. When I went through school, a lot of us started that way. And it's great to have a background in that, because when you get into a hygiene field, I've seen what we call like prima donna hygienists, which are kind of like, that's not my job, I'm not helping. And so it's nice to know where the assistants come from. And if they're busy and backlogged, we jump in and help, you know?
Be a team player more than this.
Exactly. It's nice to have that understanding of that, not just, it's not my job, I'm not doing that.
So, I mean, you could talk to current day, because I assume you know that better than any of the others, which is, what are the hours and pay like for dental assisting?
An assistant, typically, it just depends on what the dentist works. So most assistants, I would say, work in one office. Hygienists, a lot of times, will work in more than one. So typically, probably about 4 days a week is an average for most dental offices. And I'm a little out of range on pays for them, so I'm going to assume somewhere between about 20, 25, depending on if you're in the rural settings, if you're in the city, if you're in a specialty practice or whatnot. But somewhere in that range, some probably go a little higher, some a little lower.
Okay, that's pretty good. I mean, I thought it'd be lower, not for any particular reason. I mean, I didn't know it took a degree to do it.
Well, and assisting is just a certification. It's a 1-year program, so it's 9 months, and it's a certification program. There's not technically a degree that goes to it. The only licensing you have to have is a radiology license, and so to be able to take the x-rays. Other than that, a dentist could teach you chairside. You don't have to go to school for it if you have a dentist that's willing to teach you. You could just take the class to take your x-rays and get your radiology license.
Cool. I didn't know any of that. So when did you finally choose to go back to school?
When I decided to go back to work when you were 2.
And you decided, I don't want to be the assistant anymore. I want to do the big job.
Exactly. I got back to it, and it was just, this is just not what I want to do any longer. You know, hygiene's really where I wanted to be.
Understandable. And that was the whole, you're just
That
like,
was
that's it,
really-
we're going back.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Yeah, that was my big deciding thing.
But that's awesome. You made that decision. It's obviously brought you where you are now, and I'm very happy with it. So.
I love what I do.
How competitive is it just to get into school?
It's very competitive to get into the colleges because they're limited to how many students you can take each year. So it takes you 2 years of an actual in-hygiene program. And in that time frame, you have to have like your own dental unit. So it's not like you could have like 50 chairs available. Dental schools have that, but hygiene schools do not. So most of them take between 18 to, I think there's a few of the colleges now here in Oregon that take 24. But for the most part, that's how many. So you get 200-300 people applying to those 18 to 24 positions. It's very competitive.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about taking like 10 to 5% of everybody who applies.
Yeah.
That's rough.
And it depends on the programs. Some of them, like where I went through Portland Community, and they do theirs on a point system, or at least they did. I'm assuming they still do. I haven't looked into it. And so you get so many points for every prerequisite class that's on their list of things. And then you get points if you've been an assistant in the past. You get points if you made their alternate list in the past. And so for me, when I got into it, 120 points was the top possibility of what I could get because I hadn't been an alternate the year before. I had 118. I made the alternate list.
And you're like, man, this is like, I have to wait.
2 points. I had to wait for somebody to decide they were going to a different school and made it into the program on that.
But see, somebody did, and
Somebody
you made
did.
it. So being an alternate was not the end of the world.
No, it's definitely, I mean, getting on that list is a step anyway. Gets you one step closer. If it's not that year, it's the next year.
Yeah, a couple more points, and then you're over the normal max out range.
That being said, to get those points, you need like the straight A's. You gotta have the good grades. Some of the schools take more for the students that are already there. So like Mount Hood Community College, they give their priority to the students that are in their district first. So it's really tough to get into their program if you don't live in that college district. Things like Pacific and OIT do bachelor's programs. So if you do your prereqs at their school, you're more likely to get into their program versus doing their prereqs at a community college. So it's those types of things.
And that's, I guess, something to address, which is the dental program is 2 years.
Yes.
And there's,
2 years of prereqs.
Yeah. So you're looking at 4 years, even though it's considered a 2-year degree.
Yes. So most of them, like mine's an associate degree. In Oregon, OIT and I think Pacific are the only two that have bachelor's programs. However, once you take your hygiene boards, it makes absolutely no difference in getting hired, whether you have an associate degree, you have a bachelor's degree. Doesn't make a difference in pay. It doesn't make a difference in anything else. You pass the same boards. You're a registered dental hygienist. That's all any dentist cares about.
So even the schooling, you're like, I went to the best dental hygiene school in the world.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. You're licensed. That's all that matters.
And you're not a prima donna.
No. And I didn't wind up quite as many thousands of dollars in debt.
See, that's the good tip right there. Saving money. That's right. Everybody write a thank you note who saved money. I hope to just have a ton of people just writing a stack of thank you notes that you guys have to sort at the office. So yeah, the other thing I guess we really haven't talked about up to this point is that you were also raising me while you were going back to school.
Yeah, you were 3 when I went back to school. So it was tough. It was tough. I'd lock myself in the bedroom because it was pretty much the only room we had in the house where it was quiet and I could study. And I can remember you coming in one day and saying, Mom, can we play? And I'm like, I'm sorry, sweetheart, I have to get through this studying. I had a big test, something coming up. And you were like, our playtime's over, isn't it, Mom? And it just like broke my heart. So hard to try and raise a little one. You have to have so much family support. So lucky for us, grandparents lived close by. Your dad was around. Yep. Things that could keep you busy while I was studying.
But you did, at some point, you had to bring me into classes too.
I did. I can't remember why I took you to school, but a couple of different occasions I think I took you to school.
And I know I have a story that I really love, and we just talked about this off air about how goofy it is. But like, I love the story because I think it's like cute.
It's just a memory that you had of it.
Yeah, I just like, it's what I remember from, because I wasn't there for most of your schooling, obviously. I wasn't like sitting in on the dental program.
Right.
But like, I was there.
You were. Yes, I took you in. I think you were about 4 years old. And I took you to school one day for God knows what reason. I have no clue. But I had a nutrition class that I was taking. And my teacher was one of those very hard-nosed, very strict type of teachers. She kind of had a friendly side if you got to the right edge of her. But for the most part, she was a pretty tough teacher. And I brought you into class and you had your little backpack of all your fun things to do that could keep you busy while we had 2 hours of lectures.
So I'm not just like tugging your shirt and
exactly.
drawing on the walls.
No, you were really good about like sitting quietly and kind of doing your own thing. And you asked me if you could have your lunch. You were getting hungry and I'm like, okay, well, we probably should wait till like break, talk to the teacher, make sure it's okay. But not you. No, you raised your little 4-year-old hand. And my hard-nosed teacher, her face just like melts. You could tell like she's probably a mom, although that thought had never, ever crossed my mind. And she gets this sweet little voice and she's like, oh, honey, hi, what do you need? And you're like, can I have my lunch? She's like, well, yes, of course you can. So you drug out all your stuff out of your backpack and proceeded to have lunch in the middle of class.
It's just no breaks involved, and I'm just like lining up my snacks. See, I love that story. So again, we talked, how long's the program? It's 2 years.
Yes.
Is that like a 2 full years, or is it 2 divided years? Like, do they break for summer? Anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like taking a regular, like I did community college. So you could take your 3 terms with your summer off. You might take year in the summer, or a class in the summertime. In the actual hygiene program itself, we did do 6 weeks in the summer. So we had a shortened period of time frame, but we did I think we did a clinical where we kind of learned some of the expanded function end of things that hygiene does, like doing sealants and denture relines and things that way.
So a little bit of a break.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, you still had quite a bit of the summer off, and I don't even remember when it was. It's like we had a few weeks at the start, a few weeks at the end, and the 6 weeks in the middle. If all the programs do that, I don't know.
But at least at that time, like,
yes,
you had one break to go do some clinical stuff and grow your hair back. Just ripping it out every class.
Uh-huh.
So how much of that class is out of a book versus hands-on?
A little of both. First year, you get clinical classes, I think a couple of times a week, where you practice first on what we call like Dexter. We have like these heads that you strap to a chair that have a mouth on them.
Should mention, this is before the Dexter serial killer series.
Oh, yes.
You're not just like strapping heads and being like, look, I'm Dexter.
No, they were created for dental stuff. They had fillings and whatnot in them. And so you use those to start with to like try and figure out how to look at a mirror, how to work backwards, which end of your instruments to use. And then we started working on like each other. And then I think by second term, we actually saw our first patients. But you still have a lot of lectures in there as far as like your radiology lecture classes. Some of those I got to skip on that one because I already had a radiology license. So I took the lectures, not the labs. Dental materials, same thing. I took the lectures. I didn't have to take the labs because I'd already been through assisting. I knew how to like mix up stuff for models and take impressions and stuff like that. So things like that was kind of nice to have that assisting background ahead of time. It made definitely getting through a little easier in program. I didn't have as many classes and as many hours as I had to take that some of the others did.
And you mentioned that sometimes you did have real people in the
chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, you start on real patients. Typically, you get them through the school to start with, people that have like stopped at the dental clinic that's there at the school that want to get their teeth cleaned. And so they gave us cards. We were all assigned a certain number of people, and it was your job to call them and get them scheduled on the days that you had clinicals and what worked with that. You could also bring in family members or friends or anybody else that you wanted to work on. But clinicals are like a 3-hour clinical. Oh. It's not like you're going to the dentist office and you're there for 45 minutes or an hour. You're there for 3 hours, and it's typically more than one visit, especially for that first year. Uh-oh. So they're long. It's a whole, it's a school process. You get to do a step, the teacher has to check it. You do a step, the teacher has to check it. And so you work your way through that. So it takes a while.
Well, I was just thinking, hey, there's an easy way to get your free dental done. Just go into the school and then spend the next 9 hours of your life doing cleanings.
Yeah, and I don't think they were free. I think it was like $15 or something. I mean, it was something that was really cheap. Like they charged you a small fee for like if we took x-rays. So there was a small fee for the x-rays. There was a small fee to do your cleanings, that type of a thing. But, if you don't have insurance or something that way, definitely way cheaper. And it's a great way for you to get something done inexpensive, and a great way for students to get hands-on experience. And then into second year, you spend more and more time on patients, less time in classrooms.
Okay. I'm sure that was really fun. Doing all that, getting just over your shoulder the whole time.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for someone who wants to go to dental school or dental hygiene school?
Prereqs. Get amazing grades on prerequisites, even if that means you take an easy class with a hard class so that you can really get that. Don't overload yourself with school classes, because otherwise you're not going to get the grades and stuff. And being as competitive as it is, those grades in your prereqs are one of your most important things to getting into the program.
So even if it takes a little bit longer than that maybe 2 years to get your prereqs done, or you have to take a class
Yeah.
twice. Like,
And take a look at what the schools, like when I went through, some of the schools had different requirements. And so if one school allows, say, a lower level of your anatomy and physiology classes, and another one requires the 200 levels, take the 200 levels, because then you can apply to more than one school, because you want to be able to have as many options as possible out there when there's only 6, 7 schools in the state and they're limited to the amount of people they can take in. You don't want to just be limited to one specific spot.
what was the hardest part about hygiene school?
Juggling work, school, and family.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out a balance for all of that and still get it done, I would say, was the toughest part. If you're looking at actually just the hygiene program itself, for me, pharmacology. Pharmacology is just a tough, I have a hard time with all the, now I hear those drugs and stuff all the time that patients are taking, so I know what most of them are. But at the time, a lot of that was new. Getting into modes of transportations and how those drugs work in your system and how does that affect your teeth. Then pharmacology was my tough one.
Yeah, see, you said pharmacology, and I thought drugs that you would have to be giving a patient. And I'm like, how many drugs are in the hygiene handbook? But you mean it's drugs patients
Are taking. So there's ones that have different effects. You can get some anti-seizure medications that make their gums more swollen. There's medications that patients take that give them a very dry mouth, which can lead to increase in cavities. So there's a lot of different medications that have different effects on the oral cavity itself.
So you saying dry mouth, I need to take a drink. There's the dry mouth. What do you think was the most memorable?
Gosh, probably the women I went to school with. You know, we did a lot of study groups together. You spend a lot of time together. There was only 18 of us, 17 actually, because we had one drop in the first year. So we got to be very close. I think that was probably the funnest, most memorable things about it. Some of my teachers I remember really well.
And then obviously you graduated.
I did, yes.
Weren't that one person that just bombed out of the class?
No, I actually did okay, yeah.
I do remember like seeing you study really hard for some of this stuff though. Like you even went at one point, you and one person from the dental school, who I won't name just because I don't know if I can say their name, went to like a secluded area, like a beach house.
Yes.
And you brought me with, and you're like, just shut up and sit over there. We got to study for the next 8 hours straight.
Yeah. It was board exams when we were studying for boards. There was actually 3 of us that went.
Was there 3?
Yeah, there was 3 of us
just
that
totally
were there.
Forgot one of them.
And gosh, we just spent like 8 hours out of the day. We were there for spring break, and we had to take our written exams as soon as we came back. And so we did. Yeah, we studied constantly.
And what is boards?
So with hygiene, you take 3 set of board exams. You do a written and a practical for anesthesiology, so that you can give injections, things like that. You take a actual national written exam, and then you take a practical exam, which in our area is called a REB, so it's a Western Regional. That practical exam covers you in like 9 different states.
Okay.
Around the area. You still would have to, like if I moved to Washington, I would still have to apply for a Washington state license, but my REBS covers my practicality end of it.
Okay, so after you graduate, you can move a little bit.
Yes.
So you're not...
Yes. If you want to retake that national exam, you could move to the East Coast type of thing. You could go to a different area, but you would have to retake your writtens to base it on that specific locations.
And then you'd have a whole new, I imagine, set of things to study, since they probably changed just east to west coast.
I think a lot of them are the same in certain aspects. The national written, Actually, let me rethink that. Your national written is good for all the states. Your rebs are your practicals. So yeah, you have to retake your practicals, which is why after taking my board exams here, we had been living in Hawaii prior to me going back to school. I had to fly to Hawaii and retake a practical exam over there. So it's the practical that's good for the Western regionals.
So you finish. A lot of people coming out of college can just start a business. Can a dental hygienist open a business on their own?
You can with an expanded practice permit. I believe you still have to work under a dentist, so you have to have a dentist that's there. But if there was a dentist that wanted to just be an employee, I'm assuming yes. I can't think of any hygienists or any businesses I know of that are actually ran by hygienists. But there's more and more that are getting their expanded practice that allows them to work out in nursing homes, schools. People who are homebound and can't get out, they can actually go to their homes and clean their teeth and take care of their oral health that way. Hospitals as well. So it gives them a greater access to things. They have a little bit more of continuing ed they have to do for it to keep those licenses up and to get them. But it is a possibility.
Okay, interesting. Now, it's competitive to get into school. Is it also competitive getting a job once you're out of school?
I think it depends on your locations.
Yeah.
And it depends on when. Like right now, there's a lot of hygiene places that are open. There's a lot of jobs available out where we're at. I don't know in all states if it's that way. On some of my hygiene sites, I've heard that a lot of the states are pretty limited. That there's not as many job openings, especially since all this COVID has hit the markets. I think it varies on a year-to-year basis too.
So there's been years where it's very hard to get in, years where it's
very challenging, and people tend up temping a lot or working one day in one office, maybe one day in another office, maybe even a third or something that way. So, I mean, there's options.
Also good. And then there's this community outreach, expanded practice jobs, kind of
Yes.
going out and about, which I guess gives you a little more availability to move around if you have that license.
Well, and a lot of the programs now, like when I went through, you had to take a separate class for this, and there was only, I think, Clark College in Washington taught a restorative class, but they now have restorative hygienists. So I know Pacific, I think OIT would have it too, since theirs is a bachelor program. But you can take the restorative classes so that the dentist comes in and actually preps the tooth for a filling, and a hygienist can actually come in and place the filling. So for some that really like that restoration end of things, for me, if I wanted to do restorative work, I'd have been a dentist. They make more money.
Right.
I don't want to do restorative. So
as you say, it's kind of a weird halfway point.
it is kind of a weird point, but there's a lot of hygienists that love it. So there's also that kind of an option. I know some hygienists that work in specialty practices for like endodontists or oral surgeons, where basically all they do is give injections. All day long they can go through and numb ahead of time for doctors and stuff. That way the doctors can just kind of move on through. Some of your practices that are more OHP practices, so which is OHP is our Oregon Health Plan. So patients that are on state assistance with dental, some of those kind of move through a little more of an assembly line type of thing. They don't pay well, so the practices have to see a lot more patients to make any money. And so in some
I know
cases,
my dog is just freaking out right outside the door.
So in some cases, hygienists can do things that way. So there's different avenues, different aspects, but most of us didn't get into hygiene to give injections. You know, it's not what we want to spend our days doing.
And then, just because I caught it when you said it, and I don't recognize it, an endodontist.
Oh, as a root canal specialist.
Okay. So there's different kinds of dentists above that, too.
There are, yeah. You've got your orthodontists, of course, they do braces.
Okay.
Hygienists don't typically work for an orthodontist. They may, but I don't know of any.
Just do a little pre-cleaning before they snap braces in there.
Or after. There's pedodontists, which specialize in children. and there's a lot of hygienists that work in that. To me, that's a really, like for me, when I have a child that's really difficult to work on in a chair, that's who I'm going to send them to. I don't want to be that person in that practice that has to deal with the difficult ones. So I have an out.
You're like, oh man, this child's awful. I'm going to just turf him to somebody else.
And some of them are children who've had really bad experiences and they just need more time. Pedodontist offices are typically a lot more fun. They'll have like TVs for the kids or video goggles, or, you know, they've got the little kid chairs instead of the full-sized ones. You have things that are really geared to kids to make it a fun place and a fun experience for them. Ours, in a general practice, we see all ages. So it's tough to have that.
Yeah, there's no child-sized chairs for the elderly.
Exactly. And then as far as specialists go, we also have your oral surgeons, which of course take out teeth, do implant placements, reconstructions, anything that way that needs to be done, and then a periodontist. And they're kind of that gum and bone specialist. So for people who have periodontal disease or issues that way, a lot of times that's kind of the direction we send them to.
That's a lot of types.
There's a lot of different avenues and aspects. So, and sometimes that's hard with general practice with patients, is that you have to go see this person for that specialty, and you have to go see this person. You know, they want everything done in one area. And there are a lot of general dentists that do a wide range of everything, but there's those that don't. And so that's kind of where patients can get real frustrated with things.
I get that, because they're doing their cleaning at your office, and then they're getting a root canal at a endodontist. Mm-hmm. Like I say, got it. And then they have to go somewhere else for their child's braces, and really becomes a three-ring circus.
It can.
Now that I'm off tangent, I'm getting back to what I was doing. You just got out of college, okay?
Okay.
That's our time jump. What is the average pay like?
Typically in hygiene, it's not that far off of where those people are that are already been practicing. Now, for me, where I've been in an office for a longer period of time, they're not going to bring in a new grad making what I make.
Right.
But
what did you make at the start?
I started out at $30 an hour.
Okay.
That's a really low pay range for where we are now. I mean, you're talking 20 some years ago.
Right.
You know, so a lot difference. I would say average right now, at least in our area, and again, some states are going to be more. If you're working in the big cities, you're going to make a little more. If you're working in a specialty practice, you're going to make a little more. But in a general practice where we are in rural settings and our local areas, I would say they start around 40 to 45 an hour.
Wow.
Is kind of your range.
So that's a big jump.
Yeah.
Now compared to then.
Yes.
And then your work week. When you started, you said you're doing like a day somewhere else and then a day in Dundee.
Yes, so I spent 2 days in McMinnville in an office and 3 days in Dundee. So I did the 5. I still do 5.
And that's not normal.
It is not normal. No. Typically, hygienists work 3 to 4 is your average. The nice thing about hygiene is that because your wage is a decent wage, you know, for people that are having kids, you're home, you want to spend time with the kids, you can work a couple of days a week and still make a really good paycheck and still have that time with your kids.
Right.
But an average full-time hygienist would be 4 days a week.
You freak.
But I love what I do. And when I look at like my days, it's like, what day would I give up? Because I have certain sets of patients who will only come in on Fridays, or certain ones that only want to come in on a Monday. And so I would rather give up a day at one of those so I have a longer weekend than a day in the middle of the week.
Just Wednesday.
And I don't really want to give up those patients and those. So yeah,
You're
I
like,
do
no,
5.
I guess I'll just do 5 forever. I've doomed myself.
I have. So straight out of school, don't start at 5 days a week. You'll never give it up.
But even 5 days a week, you work a 40-hour week, right?
Pretty close to. My Fridays are a short day.
Right.
So I average probably about 36, 37 hours a week.
Okay. But that puts you on yours, which is the expanded schedule, puts you just shy of what a normal person's work week kind of looks like.
Yes.
So I guess the average one is below that even.
Yeah,
Like a 30.
about 30 to 32 hours a week is pretty typical.
As a person working 50 hours a week, let me tell you, I'd love to work 30.
Become a hygienist.
Oh, I'm all shaky and loose. I don't know if I could. I just stab people in the
You
gums.
do kind of have to have a little bit of a steady hand for that one, yeah.
Sorry about your eye. Let's see. We went over a lot of this. I kind of just.
We just kind of jumped
Yeah,
around
we
it a
just
little
jumped
bit.
it because it was nice. I was like, "What's the work like now? What's it like then? Is it competitive?" And you covered all of that already. I know we covered special training as far as anesthesiology. You have to take your boards and you have to get that license sometime during.
Yep, you gotta have your anesthetic license.
Is there other certs that you have to do?
Yes, a nitrous. So if you want to do nitrous for patients, you have to have that certification, and that's something then that you have to keep up every couple of years. So you have to do so many hours of continuing education on that for that cert as well as for your regular license.
All right. Manage the puppy. She's a psycho.
She is a little active.
All right. So now a lot of degrees have continuing ed, and this is one of those, right?
It is one of those, yes. So for a standard hygiene license, you have 24 hours a year that you have to do in continuing ed. And some of those are in specific areas, like you have to maintain a current CPR card. You obviously have to have so many hours in your nitrous, which I just said, also in medical emergencies. And then other than that, the rest of them are pretty much anything dental related you really want to do. If you do an expanded practice permit for the hygienists that have those, I believe that's 40 hours a year.
Yikes.
So yeah, they're up close to, like, I think dentists are 40 hours a year as well. So they are right up in that category. And again, I don't know exactly what their requirements are because that's not a license I hold. But yeah.
That's all right. We'll get one of them on.
Yep.
I'll kidnap your boss. Get him on here. All right. Now, obviously, you clean my teeth.
I do.
All right. And I do an okay job.
Yeah.
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 Not as good as everyone would think, having a hygienist for a mother, but I do okay.
I had to harp on you a lot when you were young to take care of things. Yeah. I think every mom does, though. It's just that as a hygienist, when your kid has to have a filling, you think you are a failure.
And I've got a couple.
You do have a few. Yep.
So, you have a ton of tools.
Yeah.
Like, every time I come in, you've got some kind of crazy hook and a mirror and just all kinds of sharp instruments.
I actually, even though there's an arsenal of tools for hygiene, I have a couple of main ones that I use for everything.
I love that, an arsenal of tools.
Well, there is, because you've got like your standard, what we call them scalers.
Okay.
Okay, so you got your standard scalers that you have that are universals, which means each side of it is shaped exactly opposite. So what I can use on the lower right side, I can use on the upper left. But I can use the same tool for everywhere in your mouth. It's just which side of it you're using. And then you have ones that we call Gracies, which have a longer reach to them, but they have one side for a very specific spot, or one tool that's for just the front side of the tooth. And then you have a separate one for just the back side of the teeth. So you get all these different arsenals of things that you have with files and Gracies and Cavitrons and everything else. And I use a couple of very basic, simple things for everybody.
And
Every hygienist has their favorites.
Yeah.
Gracie's are some of it, some for some people. Not my favorite thing.
Gracie's company's just losing their mind right now.
I know. They do make a universal Gracie, which I do love, because that's kind of my thing. It's that whole universal thing. I can use that tool to reach certain areas that are really hard to reach with a standard tool. And it's perfect for that. But it's not something I use on everybody and everything. It has its purposes and its things.
And do you have to buy your own tools? Are they supplied by the office?
My office supplies them all. That's typical. However, my boss has always been really awesome in the fact, like, if you need something, you order it. I have friends, obviously, that are hygienists that is not the case with them. They really have to fight to get their boss to purchase the tools that they need.
And that's rough when you're talking, like 8 patients a day.
Yes. And a lot of offices where there's multiple hygienists, they share those instruments. We all have our own. So since I work 5 days a week, I always have the same room. So everything in there is mine. And it is set up specifically for where I want it to be. But we all have our own cassettes. So all of our instruments are in a cassette. And
a cassette is?
It's a metal case that we put all of our instruments in. And then that runs through our ultrasonic, which is kind of, it's like a vibration. It's in fluid and it vibrates it to kind of take any debris that may still be left on instruments, things that way. And then they get rinsed off and then wrapped up so that they're set to go into a sterilizer. And then since they're wrapped, they stay sterile until we reopen them to use for the next patient. So I have like 6 separate cassettes and I typically see 5 patients in a morning. So that gets me through my morning into my afternoon, and then by that time my next set of instruments have already gone through a sterilizer, so we just kind of rotate through them. But we each have our own, where some offices the hygienists really have to share those tools, and it's not necessarily a fun experience. We all sharpen things a little different, so yeah.
I just imagine you with a grinding wheel, just like
It's
polishing out a sword. Put in your mouth.
They actually make these little stones, so in some cases it would be a little similar to that. They also make some electric type of things that are a real...
Real easy, just buffer.
Yep, pretty much just that. You just line it up, it sharpens it for you, and you're done.
I'm going to keep my head canon. I like the thought of just a giant grinding wheel.
All right, well, you imagine all you'd like.
I will. Okay. You also mentioned something that sounds like it is from the future, which is a Cavitron.
So a Cavitron is an ultrasonic scaler, and they've been around forever. They are used more commonplace now than when I went through school. For us, it was like they made you use hand tools first, and then a Cavitron was kind of an adjunctive tool that we got to use towards the end of our first year and then on into second. And students that are in school now spend a lot more time with Cavitrons. They make it a lot more specialty tips to where they're different tips for different areas. Again, some thin, some thicker, some wide, some small. Newer hygienists use those a lot more than those of us that graduated 20 plus years ago.
Okay, so is this like the miniaturized version of a pressure washer?
It's like the miniaturized version of a jackhammer.
Oh.
So the tip of it vibrates like 30,000 times a second. It's a very fast vibration, and for people who have a lot of tartar built up, it removes that really quickly. You can just kind of line it up on there and it jackhammers through it. It has the water spray going with it so that it keeps the tip cool because it moves so rapidly. But they're finding out more and more it also kind of kills the bacteria. It makes the cells explode. So it kind of has that lyse. What do you call that? Lyse?
I'd love to know the word you're looking for.
Why can't I not think of that? Anyway, what it does is it helps to kind of kill a lot of the bacteria that's off underneath the edges of the gum lines and helps to flush that all out of the pockets and stuff. So that's where a lot of the newer hygienists come in there. For me, I still don't think they have the tactile sensitivity, and a lot of what we do is below the gum lines. So I want that tactile sensitivity. So hand instruments are still my favorite, but like I have a lot of patients that ask, so since a lot of what we do is by feel, everything has a different feel to it. So a tooth-colored filling has a different feel to it than a silver filling does. Calculus has a different feel than that does. So you can tell kind of where you've hit the root surface of the tooth, the enamel of the tooth. Are you at that margin where that root surface and the enamel meet? There's a junction there. Is it a crown? Is it ortho cement? Those types of things. Everything has a different feel.
I just got washed out in vocabulary. I follow. I track. I made a joke about plaque at the start of this. And then you hit me with tartar, and I think sauce.
Gross.
I know.
Tartar is calculus. So tartar
math.
calculus, yeah, like math. Tartar and calculus are the same thing. So plaque is kind of the biofilm or that white fuzzy stuff that you can scrape off with your fingernail. Okay. That's the plaque. That's what you remove with your toothbrush on a daily basis. The tartar is a calcified deposit that builds up on your teeth. And that's what we remove in the dental offices. Your toothbrush won't do it for you at home.
And it's not like we all build that at the same rate either.
No, everybody's different. And a lot of it depends on genetics plays a role into it. I mean, obviously, if you don't brush your teeth, you're going to build more than if you do. So your brushing definitely, your home care definitely plays a part in that. But it has a lot to do with different phosphates, minerals, things that are in your saliva content, which is why when most people go in to have their teeth cleaned, like your lower front teeth is always everybody's worst spot, because that's where your main saliva glands come into your mouth. So those areas are the ones that get coated with all those minerals and phosphates and things first. So yes, everybody builds tartar at a different rate. Some people very rapidly, other people very slowly.
Okay. And then I know from toothpaste commercials, they throw the word enamel at you a lot.
They do.
So it's a layer of the tooth.
It's the outside layers of the tooth, yes.
Okay. So it's enamel, and then what's just beneath that?
Dentin.
Dentin. Mm-hmm. Aptly named for the dental.
So for cavities, once it's gotten through the enamel to the dentin, that's when it actually becomes a cavity and you have to fill it. If it's still in the enamel surface, you can halt it or stop it. Like if it's in between the teeth, flossing. If you can keep those areas clean, or a water pick. A water pick actually is one of my favorite tools. If you hate flossing, buy a water pick.
And a water pick's relatively new too, right?
Actually, they've been around for a long time.
Oh God, I'm so far behind.
Yeah, no, they've been around for a long time, but I think they're newer for people to use, as far as they're more popular now. Like I have a lot of patients that have said, oh yeah, I used to have one of those when I was a kid, but people never, it's not like something you really stuck with, where now a lot more people have them. You hear about them a lot more, so it makes it seem like it's a very new product, even though it's been around for a long period of time.
And a water pick is essentially flossing with water.
Yeah, so it's like a little miniature power washer.
Okay, so see, I was just early.
You were early, yes. Wrong tool and early on that, but
Yep.
yeah. They're one that you can use at home, and they're fabulous.
There you go, and obviously a ringing endorsement for flossing.
Yes.
From the Dental Hygienist. I know I'm going to hear about this as soon as we get off air. How's your flossing habits? Bad.
Use a water pick.
I know, I have
It
one.
will replace your flossing. And if anybody has kids with braces, water pick.
It just gets right around all
Oh my goodness, yes. It'll get around those brackets and underneath those wires so much easier than anything else. They are a bit on the messy side till you kind of figure out use a little bit. But, you clean your mirror, your sink, yourself, your teeth, all at the same time with one.
You just jack the water pressure all the way to the top and then just get in the shower.
They do make them for the shower. They're not quite as effective as the countertop models, but they do make them for a shower.
I was just thinking you get in the shower and just let it all just down the drain and then you shower off.
No, it's just why don't you stand in a mirror and look at what you're doing. You put your face over the sink and just open your mouth and just let it flood on out.
Just go for it.
Just go for it.
All right. So enamel, dentin. Obviously, dentin has some kind of a feeling because we know when we have a cavity.
Yes. So enamel doesn't have nerve endings in it where the dentin does.
Thank God it doesn't. Can you imagine like chomping down on a nut or something if your teeth all felt? Ugh. We'll all be on liquid diets.
Which might not necessarily be a bad thing for some of us.
Well, I like cake, so.
Yeah.
I guess I could still eat cake. It probably wouldn't be that bad.
You can eat cake. You just have to brush your teeth afterwards.
All right. So anyway, I'm interrupting. Dentin feels.
Dentin feels. So sensitive toothpaste for a lot of people who have root exposures, and the root structure of the tooth is actually cementum. But again, nerve endings in it and around them. So a lot of people who get recession of the gums where they've receded expose that root structure of the tooth that has nerve endings in it. So a lot of people will get sensitivities from those. So sensitive toothpaste, fluoride rinses, things like that.
And then obviously, like the root is the center in the cementum.
Cementum is the root itself.
Okay.
So the center of the tooth is actually the pulp or the nerve. So there's a blood supply that run to teeth. So when you end up having to do a root canal, you're taking that blood supply out. It's because it has gotten contaminated either from a cavity getting to it, an impact if you got hit in the mouth. Sometimes the nerves just have had too much going on to them and they don't recover.
And that's why a person that loses a tooth bleeds so profusely. It's not like just a cut in the mouth. They just kind of like just ooze from the tooth.
Well, yes, but also because you just had something ripped out of your face. So the gums and everything else are going to bleed around there. It's not just from the center of the tooth, but the nerve endings run up the middle of the tooth.
That would hurt. Obviously, I've never lost a tooth that's not a baby tooth, so
Yes.
we're in the pro side there. Couple cavities, but no missing teeth.
Yay.
Also, I didn't have wisdom teeth,
You did not have wisdom teeth.
and that's weird.
It is. We see it every so often, but it is kind of on the unusual side, yes.
Just since I'm on it already, I'm already on this tangent, do people always get 4?
No, some people will have 1, 2, sometimes it's a lower, sometimes they're uppers, sometimes they're right side, sometimes it's left. Sometimes they'll be missing one of them. We see that quite a bit. I've had a few, and this is kind of like people missing wisdom teeth. There's a few of those rare ones who actually will have like 6 of them.
Oh,
They
God.
get the extra ones, and typically the extras that I've seen are usually uppers.
Okay. So just that's a real horrifying image. I'm thinking about it like tickling the tonsils in the back. Whew. Okay. Well, I feel better about never having wisdom teeth.
You got lucky.
Yeah. Woo. I don't even remember where it was before this tangent.
We were talking about nerves, sensitivities.
Okay.
So I'm guessing maybe fluorides is kind of our next
Sure.
leadway into that.
So there's a lot of products, like certain toothpastes, that say it can repair your teeth. Is there something to that, or is that like kind of fake marketing?
There's something to that. So most toothpastes have fluoride in them. Fluoride helps to rebuild tooth structure. So your teeth, if you think about them, it's like building blocks. They're always breaking down and always rebuilding, just like cells and everything else in your body. So it's when that tooth structure breaks down faster than it can rebuild that you get cavities. So that fluoride helps to rebuild that. And so with toothpaste, fluoride rinses, things like that help to do that. It also helps to seal up some of those nerve endings, where if you've got that cementin or that root structure exposed, it can help to kind of put a clear coat is the easiest way to think of it. For me, I always think of like a fingernail polish. It puts like a clear coat over top of those nerve endings and helps protect them so that you don't get that temperature transmissions and stuff into the teeth.
So the fluoride that is in toothpaste, and I'm assuming mouth rinses and lots of other stuff, is it the same kind of fluoride people talk about putting in water?
Basically, yes. Yes. So there's different fluorides that they'll use in toothpaste. There's different levels of fluoride that they use in things. So there's a lot of places where fluoride's naturally occurring in water supplies. The places where it doesn't naturally occur, that's where they want to add it to it. And it's a 1 part per million. So if you think of like 1 drop of fluoride to 1,000,000 drops of water, that's kind of the dosage of what they want to add into water supplies to help.
So it's extremely diluted.
It's extremely diluted.
Okay. Because I know I've seen that pop up on a couple of ballots for voting, is like, do we add fluoride to the water?
Well, fluoride's a very controversial thing in the dental fields. It's one of those that people either love it or they hate it. Anybody I know in the dental field, we're all really for fluorides because we see what teeth look like in kids and adults that were raised without fluoride and those that were raised with fluoride. And it's night and day difference to the amount of cavities and issues that kids have without it versus those with it. That fluoride gets incorporated into your body and into the building blocks of the teeth. And so it makes the teeth much harder and more resistant to getting cavities. So those that grow up with it, really a huge bonus for them.
Healthier teeth.
Absolutely, yes.
So now we've been through all the technical part of that. Cleaning a tooth, you said you just kind of take that big hook scythe and you just dig all the tartar off our teeth, and then what?
And then you polish them.
I mean, you just have I know you have a little rotary tool
Yeah.
that's in there. Is that polish like a fluoride?
No, it doesn't typically have fluoride in it. It has a pumice, is kind of the grit that's in it. So when you have your teeth polished and you have
Feels
kind of
real
that
gritty,
gritty
yeah.
stuff, that's a pumice that's in there. I don't know exactly what all they put in prophy paste, but there's flavorings so that you get mint or cookie dough or root beer or whatever, bubble gum, different flavors that you have to that.
I read cookie dough. Where was that in my options?
That is a newer one that I have just found out about. So we will have that on order for next time you come in. You can have it. But yeah,
I'm looking forward to cookie dough on my teeth.
back to polishing. The polish just helps to remove like surface stain. When I run around there with instruments, really my main goal is to remove tartar or calculus off of the teeth. I do remove plaque obviously at the same time, but I may not get it all, and that's not necessarily my main goal in that. You want to get the stuff off there that's really the health of the gums that you're getting clean, and then the polishing paste will come back as you polish the teeth up. You're going to remove what's left of residual plaque on the teeth as well as surface stains.
Okay. And then after polishing, is that kind of the end?
Yeah, pretty much polishing, flossing, making sure that things are all nice and clean in between the teeth as well as surface-wise.
All right. Are there any patient types that are worse than normal? You don't have to call anybody out, but there's...
You mean patients that you don't enjoy seeing? Some of them that are...
I mean, they could either be just because they're grumpy or because they have absolutely horrible dental care. Like the guy that comes in after 10 years and he's like, nah, I figured it's once every decade and I'll be fine.
I've seen those. I get a wide range. I see a lot of the same people over time. Some of them I love seeing on my schedule. Some of them not quite so much. But yeah, everybody has their good days, their bad days. Some days they come in very grumpy. Some days I'm very talkative. Some days I'm a little more quiet. We all have those days of what works for us and what isn't. As far as kids versus older people, I see both goods and bads in all of that. So with kids, sometimes there's more fear to them. If they've been in a few times, usually they're really easy and they love being in there because they get their Trident gum and they get their toys and they get their stickers and they get their fun end of it. Seeing kids all day is really tough because you have to be very upbeat, very happy all the time. It's a little bit high maintenance.
A little draining.
So that's why I would not work in a pedo office, but there's some people that are absolutely fabulous at that. It's just their personalities. With elder patients, sometimes getting them maneuvered in and out of chairs, or you can't lean them back very far, so it makes what I do a lot harder. Sometimes I end up having to stand for them because I can't lean them back very far, so they're harder to work on in some cases. So there's always challenges. Everybody's a little different, which is what I love about my job. Even though you're cleaning teeth all day, every mouth is different, every patient is different, every personality is different. And so I feel like I'm not doing the same thing all day long.
Good. And then we kind of brushed on it, which is, 45 minutes to an hour in a normal dental office and 3 hours at a student office. Is an hour enough, or would you want more or less for certain people?
So in my office, we get an hour and a half for new patients. I don't know quite how all practices work. I know from friends that I have that are hygienists, my office is really easy on time. Some offices are more like 45-minute appointments or an hour appointment, but you're taking x-rays, doing an exam, you're measuring pocket depths, you're cleaning, you're doing all of it in that time frame. We only do x-rays and exams typically once a year, unless there's something that we see as hygienists that we need the doctor to look at. So I get to kind of alternate. I can do x-rays, exams, and a cleaning in an hour time frame on some patients. The next one may need new measurements around their teeth. teeth to find out how healthy the gums and the bones supporting them are doing, and getting their cleaning done. So, and then if I have patients who have a lot of stain or a lot harder, I just schedule their next one for maybe it's 70 minutes or it's 80 minutes. So my office is very lenient in that aspect, and that we kind of get to run our own hygiene departments. So if I need more time, I allow more time. And my doctor's fine with that.
See?
Not all practices are that way.
It's really awesome, though.
Yes.
Everybody else take notes. Start demanding. Strike.
It's just important to know that not all, there's a lot of different avenues to hygiene. There's a lot of different types of practices out there, and every doctor has a different personality, and you have to remember that when you go to an interview, do a working interview is the best way for a hygienist. And you're interviewing the staff in the office as much as they're interviewing you. It's not always, know when you have something good too, because the grass isn't always greener on the other side. That next office may not be where you want to be, and you'll be really disappointed that you gave up where you were. So there's definitely pluses and minuses in all aspects. And so you really need to look for what it is and know your own worth. You can't do the quality job that you need on your patient if you're expected to do everything in a short time frame. Something's getting skimped. So whether it means you're not doing a very good job at removing the tartar around their teeth, or you don't get a chance to really do much for polishing, you're flying through something, they're not getting the quality of treatment as a patient that they should be getting if you allowed more time.
And that's awesome that, you're speaking from a patient advocate point of view.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is awesome, because there's so many places they're just like another patient, another dollar, another whatever, just fly in, fly out.
And a lot of offices anymore, and more so in different states, Oregon's not quite as bad yet, that are corporately owned. And so everything is about the bottom line. They're looking at what that bottom dollar is and how much they can make. And so they tend to over-treatment a little bit more. Where my office has always been very much, it's about the patient. Yes, obviously the practice wants to make its money. It needs to make its money to stay in business, and we all want our paychecks. And so there is the fact that, yes, it is about the dollar, but it's also about that quality of patient's care, because if you don't have patients, you're not making that money. So if you treat your patients right, your patients are going to stay, and they're going to tell their friends about you or their family. They're going to refer people to you, and you're going to have that great base of a practice.
And I know your office has a ton of regulars that have been there forever.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, I'm never going anywhere else. I'll come back here even if it's a long drive.
I do. Actually, I have patients that drive up from Central Oregon, from the coast, from Tri-Cities areas. So
hours. Yeah.
Yes.
Hours and hours of driving.
In fact, I have one that drives about 4 hours for his appointments.
Each way?
Yes.
Wow.
He comes down from Washington. And it takes him, it's about a 4.5 hour drive, and he makes that drive every 6 months.
See, and that's why you're like, I can't give up a day because I'm going to see him and it's going to be what he needs.
Yeah.
That's awesome. As well as advocating for your patients, I assume you give them kind of the, these are good habits, these are bad habits.
Oh, of course. That's part of your job. You have to educate them. You have to let them know what you're missing, where you need to work on it. Because if we're not telling you, you can't see in your own mouth. You don't know what you're missing, where your work needs to be. Looking at x-rays and knowing, look, you have a lot of little things that are starting in between the teeth, but you can change these or stop them. You can't ever reverse it. That shadow that may be there on a film that hasn't, like I said before, kind of gotten through the enamel and into the dentin where you have to do a filling. If it just stays that small little spot and you can keep that, we'll look back on films and see that it's been that way for the last so many years. Maybe it's been there 10, 15 years. So you don't know those things unless we educate you.
And that brings us to kind of some of the worst things for your mouth. Because I know, what is it? I don't want to get sued by them, but one of the colas you can drop a tooth into it and it will dissolve, right?
Yes.
Like that was an internet thing for a little while.
Yes, you can drop a tooth into a glass of Coca-Cola and give it a week, 2 weeks. I'm not actually really sure what that time frame is on there, so maybe don't quote me on that. But you can drop a tooth into a glass of pop and it'll eat it. Yeah. There's enough sugar and acids in pop to do just that.
And I know things like Mountain Dew, for my quotability here, have a ton of sugar in them. So is it worse to have a lot of sugar or to be that hard, whatever it is in the brown soda?
It's worse for exposures. So let's start there. So exposures are kind of the worst thing. So if you sat down, say, with a liter of Mountain Dew,
sure,
and you had lunch and you downed it in 15 minutes, that's one exposure of sugar and acids on your teeth. If you take that liter of soda and it's sitting on your desk and you take a drink of it and you get back to work, that's an exposure. 10 minutes later, you come back and get another swallow. Every time you drink that, and it takes you all day long to drink that same amount of pop, is way worse on your teeth than if you drank it in one sitting and had one exposure.
Oh God, now I'm gonna chug everything.
Well, that's just it. Eat it, drink it, whatever, in a short time frame. And then, the more you snack, the more exposures you have.
And then just be done.
Yes.
Okay. God, there's so many other things that are horrible for your teeth, too. I know I wanted to talk about it was nicotine. The nicotine effect on your teeth. Is there one product in particular you'd single out? Is it a cigarette or is it a chew?
Cigarettes tend to stain teeth. So granted, nicotine itself can break down the tissue of the teeth. So not necessarily the tissue of the teeth, but the gums. So it can contribute more towards like periodontal disease, inflammation of the gums, things that way. And of course, the inhalation of the smoke, whether it's vaping or it's on an actual cigarette, you get those darker teeth. You can get the yellow stains. Marijuana smoke tends to leave more of a green stain, something a little different that you see
St.
more
Patrick's
now with
there.
all the legalizations of that. Smokeless tobaccos, so chewing tobacco, is actually the ones that I think are worse because they're sitting up against the teeth, the tissues. There's a lot of things in there that are very abrasive to tissues that could it basically cuts it. That's how that nicotine enters into your bloodstream, is it creates these little tiny cuts of your gums or your lip. And then that nicotine enters your system. So now you're getting that nicotine that's really harsh on the tissue itself, but it's getting the direct exposure to it. So it can cause a lot of recession in the gums because of the sugars and stuff that are in it, then can lead to cavities in there as well as oral cancers. So I see a lot more issues with that product versus all the rest of them.
Okay. Don't think I've ever heard it outside of, in a dentist's office when like you and I are talking about something, but oral cancer just doesn't seem to get coverage, and it is serious.
It is very serious. It's one of those that is, unless you're frequently at your dentist, is an easily overlooked thing because again, you can't see in your mouth. So now you're reliant on your professionals to find those for you. And if it's under the tongue, a lot of times it's not visible. And those are the ones that are the most dangerous. Those are the ones that tend to be where you hear the horror stories of people who got oral cancers and it led to losing half of your jaw, or it spreads through the rest of your system because of all the glands and everything that you have, obviously from the floor of your mouth to your throat, your neck. It can enter into a lot of areas. The tissue itself, oral cancers are, a lot of times, if you're chewing, you can pull your lip down. You can see it's kind of got a white puckered tissue. Keep an eye on it. If it gets to be where it's not going away when you've kept
switching sides.
Yes, move the chew to someplace else the next time you put it in. That gives that tissue at least a little bit of a break from it to where it's not always in that same place. But you can kind of look at that a little bit and see, but if it gets farther back, again, you can't see it. So oral cancer, yeah, it doesn't get the attention or the notoriety that a lot of the other cancers do.
So outside just oral cancer, which is obviously terrible, your tooth health, dental health, affects a lot of the rest of your body as well. Like
It does, and they're actually linking more and more and more to your overall general health to your mouth. So people who have like periodontal disease, some of the bacteria and stuff that's in your mouth from the periodontal disease can actually contribute towards heart issues. It can uncontrolled A1Cs for diabetics, pregnancies, low-term birth weights, in infants. So there's a lot of things and more so that they're coming out with. Everything, I mean, if you think your whole body is really one big system, of course your mouth is going to have an effect on that.
especially if it's the intake for everything else.
Yes.
Like it's got the most kind of abuse that you get.
And it's as systemic as everything else is. So the healthier your mouth is, you know, the healthier your body probably is. And as well as, you know, if you're suffering with periodontal disease, you've got gums and bone issues, all of that and that bacteria is going to have a major effect on everything else. It runs through your system. How could it not? Whether there's an infection there from, say you need a root canal and you have an abscess tooth, you now have an infection that your body's continuously fighting. It'd just be like if you had an infection anywhere else, you know, if you had a cyst on your arm or something that you had to look at and it was constantly oozing pus, which is a gross thought,
Yeah.
but, you know, obviously, right, you'd go do something about it.
Yeah.
But for some reason, when it's in your mouth, people don't. But yet it's the same thing. You get that infection that has to drain somewhere.
Right, and you're talking, I mean, it affects your heart, and I know here in America, I don't know about the rest of the world, but here in America, heart disease, number
Yes.
one killer. I think number two is diabetes,
And
it's affected by your dental health. And then, I mean, it goes down, but like, you're talking all the three big ones, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, right in your mouth.
yes,
So it's critical to go and actually take care of your teeth.
yes.
Trying to move off the little serious notes we're getting there. Be a little fun. But how does this job, obviously over 2 decades plus assisting,
You're making me older by the second here.
well, you know, I'm closing on my 3rd decade.
Yeah, we don't need to go there. People don't need to know how old you are to figure out how old I am.
Anyway, you know, 2 decades of doing this job, how has it affected your body?
You know, a lot of people have different effects, I should say. I know some people who've had a lot of hand or wrist issues, depending on the movements. A lot of people do have carpal tunnel issues. I'm lucky in that aspect, especially working 5 days a week. I don't. However, I usually have a long-term, kind of long-lasting pain that goes from my neck to my shoulder on my right side. And that's because it's the arm that's always held up. So I have muscles there that are always tight, always tensed. In fact, when we had time off for COVID, where our office was closed for a while, and I didn't have that, I got back to work, it bothered me 10 times worse because I wasn't used to using that again. But for the most part, really, I mean, you have to just try and keep a decent posture so that you're not hunched over people all the time to lead towards back or neck issues.
And then I know a lot of you guys wear the funny glasses.
Loops.
Loops. Fruit Loops. You wear loops, and that's, I assume, natural eye degeneration over time. Like, they just get worse. Not from the job, but in general, like, all of our eyes get worse every year. So I assume, like, you need those eventually just to see.
Thanks for that. But probably I didn't get mine till later. But honestly, they start wearing loops now right out of school.
Okay.
Because it's just easier. They're a magnification. So, like, mine are a 2.5 times magnification. They go up to, I think, 4 or 4.5. So it just kind of depends. You know, sometimes I'll go with 2, sometimes it's 2.5, 3, whichever you need. But that makes your field of view a little smaller because it's larger, but it allows us to see so much more.
And not really have to crane your neck around.
Right. And it doesn't really have anything to do with how well you see without them on. You know, it allows you to do a better job at what you do with them on.
I know, I had that. I'm just like, I go into the dentist's office and they're wearing funny glasses and looking at me.
I do have reading glasses now because my eyes have deteriorated. However, it has nothing to do with my loops or why I wear them.
Right. Oh, I know. I used to have kids when I went to school, way back in the day. They recognized me from you because you have like a picture of me in the office, and then they come to school and they're like, oh, hey, I just saw your picture in your mom's office. Is it really common to get noticed in public, get recognized?
Yeah, I run into patients. I mean, it's a small town, you know, and even though I don't live in Dundee itself, everything pretty much surrounding this area are small towns. So I run into patients at a lot of places, grocery stores, shopping, wherever. Yeah. You know, I have patients of mine that work at like Dutch Bros. So if I drive through Dutch Bros, they're like, oh, hey,
Hey.
I know who you are.
Getting that drink you told me was bad for my teeth?
Exactly.
Sure
the
am.
one with all the sugar. I love the Rebels.
So,
but it's one exposure. I drink it in a pretty short time span.
So, I'm not sponsored by Dutch Bros, but I'm open to that possibility. Send me a sponsorship. But yeah, like I've seen people like notice you, and that's a weird kind of recognition. I think a lot of people don't see it like a normal job. Like say you work at the grocery store, I don't recognize my cashier anywhere else. But like you're right there, you know.
Yeah, but a cashier you see for a short period of time. I see people in my chair for, if they're kids, maybe half hour, 40 minutes, adults an hour, maybe a little longer, 2 to 3 times a year, 4 times a year in some cases, you know, or as parents bring the kids in, you know, I may see those parents several times during the year because they're in every time with their kids. So yeah, you know, when you see those same people over and over and over again, you know, we talk about their lives. I have people that dropped off wedding gifts for you that had never met you simply because they felt like they had known you their whole life and they knew you were getting married. You know, so it's those types of relationships, but that's what I love about my job is I get those relationships. Even though it's every 6 months that I get updated on things, you know, sometimes it's like I've seen patients when were kids to now they've graduated high school or graduated college or getting married or having kids of their own and bringing their kids in. So I've seen those generations and I love it. I love seeing what they're doing with their lives, where they're at, how things are for them.
But that's awesome because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't get that much involvement even in their coworkers' lives. You know, you work with a guy for 5 years and then you never see him again. Whereas, like, you're seeing the kids of the kids you used to see. Like, and that's really cool.
I love it.
You're like, man, I remember when you were this age in my chair.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have a little one here in my chair.
Yeah, I love it. It's having those relationships that make your job worthwhile. You know, if it's just you're seeing people to get them in, get them done, and it's an assembly line, and they're just processing people through, what fun is that?
Yeah, who wants to do that all day?
Yeah, that's not what you want to do. You want to have those conversations. I get to hear about vacations, and if I have questions about vacations or places I want to go, all I have to do is ask patients because somebody's been where I'm thinking of going. They give me advice on where I need to go, where I need to avoid, what I should see when I'm there. You know, it's those types of things. I love that.
So you got your own private information source.
I do, about everything.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I got free advice from every market in the world.
I do because I have patients, like I said, I mean, travel's like one aspect, but you know, I have patients who are teachers and so I get to keep up, especially with COVID stuff, you know, where schools are going, where kids are headed, where things are kind of going in that avenue. I have lawyers, I have judges, I see doctors and nurses and firemen and police, and you know, so I have all these avenues of people to like get information from my electricians and plumbers and contractors. If I need to have work done, I know who to call. You know, it's It's a wonderful network.
I say you're basically doing what I'm doing on this podcast, but in a much more efficient version.
I don't know that I get quite as detailed into questions about their jobs, but I've learned, like I knew nothing before about wineries, how different weather patterns affect the grapes or the smokes from the fires we had this year, how all of that affects that. But I've learned a lot about grapes and bottling and things that I never knew before. So I'm constantly learning something.
And that's what we're aiming for here. So you've got, nearly perfect star on that one. But talking about that, we are in the start of 2021. We came out of the worst year ever. So bad they make documentaries about it.
Yep.
How has COVID-19 affected the dental practices?
So COVID-19 obviously it's affected everybody in one aspect or another. As far as offices go, they shut down all dental offices around the middle of March. In Oregon, they reopened us in the start of May. As far as changes, dental offices have always dealt with aerosols. That's always kind of been one of our main concerns. So a lot of what we did was already up to where we needed to be. They've changed aspects of, like, I now wear a shield that I didn't wear before. We have air purifiers in our rooms. They've changed, like our waiting rooms are closed. The front office really has kind of had our major changes in that they now have to wear masks. They have barriers between them and the patients for checkouts. They have to constantly, they're wiping down counters. You let a patient in and you check their temperature. Now you've got to wipe down everything that was on that table. They've got to wipe down the doorknobs. And somebody uses a bathroom and they get up and they wipe down all the doorknobs and everything in the bathrooms and stuff. So there's those aspects that have changed that are new, but a lot of like our cleanup and stuff in the back hasn't changed. We sterilized all of our instruments before. You sterilize your hand pieces. You throw away everything that's disposable that you can throw away, you throw away. I am not using any different barriers now than what I had before. I've got the same barriers going on, everything. So there's a lot of things that, dental offices, and I think it's one of the reasons they opened us up early, because if you think about it, we're sitting less than a foot away from somebody who's not wearing a mask, working in their mouth, spraying aerosols, and we're there for 30 minutes to an hour and a half, 2-hour appointments, and that's okay. And it's because they knew that dental offices are used to dealing with aerosols. It's kind of been something that's always been there for us. We've always dealt with viruses. We've always had to deal with the sterilizations and the cleanups. And so I don't think that we've had as huge of changes as a lot of places have.
Well, and you guys always wore masks before.
Oh, yes.
So that's not even new to you guys.
No, that's not really new either on that aspect. The level of masks, like they want to see us wearing N95s or KN95s. And several of our staff do. In fact, some of them will double mask. With me, I think that a level 3 with my shield, I'm comfortable with that. I do double mask if I'm using a Cavitron or I have those additional aerosols that are really going in the air. But most of hygiene, honestly, for years has always been splatters. Yes, we deal with the aerosols when we spray air and water on the teeth. You've got that mist. But it's different than like the doctor that's using the handpiece that is spraying water around, or the Cavitrons that are spraying air, that constant stream of stuff. If I'm doing those, yes, I do step up what I'm doing. But for the most part, with just my hand scaling, my masks and my shields are plenty.
See, that's good. Now you know you're... all your local hygienists and dentists are really on top of stuff.
Yes.
I know I've kept you hostage here for like an hour and a half now, and I'll have to trim this down. But overall, just for everybody out there, would you say you've enjoyed your career?
I love my career. In fact, I wish I had gotten into hygiene sooner than I did so that I had more time to spend doing just that, because I love that hands-on with them. With an assistant, you're busy, but you don't get the one-on-one with a patient. You don't have time where your hands are really in their mouth. You do for certain things, but they're short periods of time. Most of it is with the doctor. But for me, if I could have done assisting earlier, roll back that time and have done it when I was younger, or done hygiene, I would have. Yeah, I'd have gotten into my career sooner. I love it.
And see, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming in on your busy weekend.
No, absolutely. I always love seeing you, so.
Love seeing my mom.
I don't get to see you that often, so it's great.
But I always enjoy the time we have together. So I'll cut this podcast. Maybe we'll do something fun. Alrighty. We'll see you next time out there, everybody. And until then, I don't know. Just stay open. Thank your dental hygienists. They're working hard. And they love seeing you, so get to enjoy seeing them. Maybe they'll tell you a story or two. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the show. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please reach out, tell family, coworkers, friends, anything to listen to it. I would greatly appreciate any support you could give us. If you've really enjoyed it, you could go on to Apple Podcast or Stitcher or Spotify or Google Podcasts or wherever you're listening from. Just leave a good review. Maybe if it's really funny, I'll read it on the show. I enjoy good humor. Or if you have a good dumb example, maybe I'll read that too. Otherwise, if you want to reach out to us, I'm on social media, Dumb Enough Podcast, pretty much everywhere. Or you could reach out at dumbenoughpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any suggestions for guests or questions for guests or just want to chat, reach out to me there. I'll get a hold of you. All right. See you in the next episode. Bye-bye.